Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Pati rupa desva socha pupe chakata punyata attasama paniti cha etamangalamuttamang. So you're familiar with this second verse of the Mangala Sutta, to be abiding in a suitable place, suitable location, suitable environment, with the blessings of past good deeds, and to be guided in the righteous, the rightful way, the purposeful way of Dhamma. This is the great occasion. Obviously you can translate these words differently, but that's one way of looking at it. So, an occasion, and it's not really an occasion in terms of time, it's an occasion in terms of your citta. Like actually, how marvelous that one can actually be receiving the imprint in your citta of many skillful intentions and aspirations and inclinations and actions, both your own and that of others. Not everybody gets this. And even we doing skillful things and helpful things and refrain from unskillful things and living in a situation set up by people rich with skillful conduct, we can still not get it, not really tune into it. Yeah. So just kind of realize this is an interesting point, isn't it? How the citta is so drawn to its dukkha, its incompleteness, its things that are not finished yet, its feelings of what I need to have or get or not be or avoid or stuff that's bothering me. So, to just, it's like, when you're healthy, you don't recognize how good it is to feel healthy. Because it's just, normal. But it's not normal. It's a great occasion. Of course, most of the time we are pretty healthy, but we don't really notice it. But you get sick, or you get a thorn in your finger, or you get a difficult knee, you certainly notice that. That jumps up, doesn't it? But the health doesn't grab you. Interesting, and yet that immense benefit, just having good health. Similarly, when the citta doesn't notice its health, it notices its disease. Because that's the thing it's kind of stuck against, stuck with, causing friction. We don't notice the non-suffering. To live in a suitable environment. What does this mean? Really, when we say the environment, suitable environment is one where one can keep precepts, where precepts are honoured. Because the thing that really impacts us, if you're really basing yourself in your citta, is people are harsh speaking, abusive, kind of uncooperative, and then even in monasteries, even the kind of worst of it, people are never actually physically killing or drinking, or deliberately lying. They may be a bit sullen or moody or restless, but we don't really. So, sort of environment isn't just the landscape, but it's the human environment. Naturally, when we live in a territory that allows space and quiet, of any kind, you compare the busiest monastery with High Street in London, it's still an oasis of tranquility. And we try to make it so that even as actions in the monastery, they're done in a certain way. We do it with a lot of, contention, and we talk what's necessary and not what's not necessary. And we try to flow along harmoniously. So there's a sense of, yes, it's active, yet it's a fluid stream. It's not a vortex or a hurricane. That's the main theme of it, isn't it? Because we recognise practice is not just an internal thing, nor is it just an external thing. It's where the external and the internal meet. And we use wise attention, one of the aspects of wisdom, yoniso manasikara, to selectively, let's give attention to the good, the true, the beautiful, the good-humoured, the aspiring, and give attention to that, and give attention to that in oneself. So certainly when we started Cittaviveka, very few people would have thought it was a suitable environment as such, because of course mostly it was a wreck. The building was a wreck. Go on all about that, but you've heard the stories. And it meant we worked, average day would be, say, 7:30, 8 in the morning, till 6 in the evening, with lunch break, obviously, an hour or so. And I think probably every day, or most every day, apart from the Luang Por Sucitto day. And it was often grimy work, shoveling rubble, hacking buildings, knocking bricks into shape, chainsawing, heavy, grimy work in the cold, and so on. And, but what really, that was all true, but what you remember is a tremendous spirit of cooperation and giving each other space and good humour. A lot of it emanating from Luang Por Sucitto, really ebullient, warm, good humour, but everybody picking up that same theme of being good-humoured, tolerant, encouraging, and somehow it just, that was the sense of, and that impressed itself, that kind of supplanted the difficulties of the physical environment. And of course, actually, the physical environment, in many respects, was still safe, unthreatening. You could keep the precepts. There was no violence, there was no drinking, so on. No kind of intoxicants, no kind of wild debauchery or anything like that, or just distractedness as a focused environment. And the theme, of course, was the focused environment in which your senses are both working together, which was beautiful, happy feeling, and feeling you're doing something good for yourself, but fundamentally for the long-term benefit of the Sangha, and of course the laity and the Dhamma. So you get a feeling of we'll work, we'll get tired, but we will do this so that people in the future will benefit from it. So this kind of thing, there's a fundamental, attitude towards karma. And there's more to it than that. But that sense in which, the sense of doing the good and encouraging that and seeing the good in each other and operating through the goodness in each other, our ability to let go and cooperate. Okay, let's do it your way and try again, and sorry about that, just keeping that going meant that it was quite a buoyant occasion in many respects. And you can actually kind of feel warmed by it. Heart will feel warmed by it. It does remind us that although we tend to be conceive ourselves in a world of sense consciousness, actually we live in the heart. That's where we come alive. This is a training and a basis in that. Yeah. So this is when we kind of set that up as the centre piece. When it's not doing very much, still we keep up that same theme of cooperation and good humour, and working together, and smoothing, keeping smooth sense of congruence. That is the basis for absorption. So concentration or samadhi begins like that. It begins based upon the heart. It's not based upon focusing on a particular physical point, but based upon collecting goodness into the heart and absorbing it, taking time to focus on it and take it in. How is it made deeper? As you linger. So you train your volition, your action to be not just active but also receptive, and to keep returning to qualities that are endearing and uplifting. And you have to make an effort with it, because the tendency is for the citta to get drawn towards qualities that are disturbing, aggravating, the present or the past, in yourself and in others. It's just, a habit we've got to work against. Dukkha. And then using this body as like a battery or a storage, whereby it's like something you can store the energies in the body. So punya, or goodness in this sense, and papa, evil or afflictedness. These aren't just value judgments based upon some social code. They actually are referred to particular qualities of energy. So the punya, the meritorious energy, it's brightening, it lifts, and it permeates. And you feel something feels straightened, cleared. You feel weight drops off you with that. It's a very redemptive and restoring energy, punya. The opposite, weighs you down, spins you round, constricts you. Now you can check this out in your own experience. It's one way of determining, because the mind is a slippery thing. We can find ourselves justifying this or not noticing that. So really detecting the energies of when we get into negativity and how that feels, whatever the cause, and to really just not get too focused on the cause. So it's because this didn't work, or she's like this, which maybe that has a truth to it, but there's not much you can do about that immediately. Whether he's like this, or that's like that, or that didn't happen, or this did happen, that is circumstantial. There's not a lot you can do about that right now. Yeah. So your practice then is to notice the sense of, disappointment, frustration, irritability, and just wait a minute. Just not go into that. Notice that, and then just lift the attention from that into, I can be patient. I can not get involved with that. I can detach, step back from that. And then using a breath to breathe out and breathe in. You're returning to something more central. Are you able to discharge the pull of the dukkha, negative? And this is viveka, sense of stepping back from unskillful, unwholesome states. It's because the energy is very captivating. Energy is like that. It saturates and it propels thoughts and emotions and even bodily conditions. It becomes sankhara. So these are called formations in our text. They mould and shape. And the baseline, as you can feel, in terms of the heart, gets heated or agitated or stirred. Thinking goes into obsessive loops, and you can feel your body. Either you lose your body altogether because you're so involved with the thoughts and the emotions, or your body feels just kind of a narrow state up in your head or in your chest, or churning in your belly, or constrictions, or heat flooding through your system. This is called a afflictive bodily formation. In a rather cumbersome language, but that's what it is. And how does that? So if that can get dispelled, then we kind of have a way of tackling the energy without necessarily having to go into the storyline of the perceptions, the emotions, the circumstances. We just go into the basic activation of energy. This is when we say, how do you do that? Well, you can come back into the whole body, the entirety of it, felt as a felt experience. From as far up as you can sense, as far down, as far forward, as far back, you get this complete a felt experience of your body. It's not exactly the same as the anatomy, but it's ideally you can touch the ground and the space above and the space around you, a sense of being in that. And that rather more uncontracted state, it doesn't let energy tangle. It keeps things open so energy can then discharge, and finally we feel balanced. Yeah. See, so because with these negative afflictions, the energy tangles, and that's what that whirlpool effect of them is, and the tightening effect is like the tangling. And you can't go in there and start untangling it, because it's like wrestling with an octopus. And every time it keeps sprouting more arms. So you go into that very open perspective and don't deal with the issue right now. Deal with the energy, discharge the space beneath, ground, space above you, space around you. And you recognise actually that's always there. Potentially it's always there. You're not always with the ground, but you could be. And that's a very healthy basis for cultivation. It's not too refined that you could only do it in special circumstances. You can walk along with that, you can stand with that, you can sit with that, you can work with that, you can take a 5-minute break with that, and just return to that. Okay, and it helps things to just not get pent up and intense. And then the kind of attitude it requires is not a high level of intense focus, but a softer but sustained and guarded, open focus. I mean, it's not completely open to every phenomenon. It's open to the experience of the stable body energy. And in that environment, that personal environment, the intimate environment, it's much more difficult for hindrances to nest. They can flick in and out, but you don't give them a ledge to land on. You take that into walking. I generally use walking. I kind of walk in like a bubble, you could say, something around arm's length in front. So living within a particular sphere, walking within a particular sphere, just like living within this bubble. Except it's very permeable because it's not got a thick wall. But keeping the eyes focused within that, and then try to stay with the whole body, and as one lives within that. And then that gives one the advantage of experiencing the body walking as a rhythmic experience, rather than sensations of plod, 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 but the whole cohesive flow that the body energy has to go through it in order to sustain walking. There's got to be a balance, a counterbalance, the movements, the swinging of the slight movement of the hips, waist, and the whole thing together. So you get something rather comfortable to dwell in. And limiting one's sense consciousness to that sphere means you avoid the tendency to run out, which the eyes are very good at doing, and run out. And the mind, of course, loves it, really wants to get out. You're staying within that. And that's your environment. Now, of course, we can live in a place like this where it is possible to sustain that intimate environment. That's an extra blessing. In that we're generally not crushed against each other, we're not in an underground train. But probably, I try to use it even when I'm in the city. Like London, I try to keep that, because it's a protector. If I stay within that, I don't go into the shop windows, I try to maintain my pace, I'm not rushing, scuttling along to get somewhere, and keep my attention in there. And you maintain a sense of... Now within that collected sphere of attention, it's possible to not get drawn out into circumstances that flutter through, but to abide in that and then do the recollecting and the contemplative work of absorbing wholesome body energy. When it's clean, bright, even if there's difficult feeling in the shoulders, but that's a sensation. Try to not get into sensation and just go into that wholesome body energy. Yeah. And then that acts, the wholesome, when the body energy is wholesome, it's much more possible for the heart to slow down and linger. Oh. It picks up the tempo, which isn't locked still, but it's not scattered. It picks up, it settles into, oh, that was beautiful. It starts to recollect fortunate occasions, either in the present or in the past. Whereas when it was scattered, then it seems as if you don't deepen into these more primary qualities of goodness. So the body can lead the heart back to its skillful health. And so we do walking, and of course standing gives you a very strong sense of connection to the ground and the space above you, because that's more or less the only thing that comes in, is that balancing sense of being grounded and balanced from the soles of your feet on up to the top of your head, and then opening immediately in front and behind, and just lingering in that, letting the sense of the breath, the breathing, and the body energies sweep through and become stabilized within that. Sitting becomes very similar, actually, in many ways. You've got the base, whether the body's sitting on a chair, on the floor, firm base, keep with that. And the spine, straight axis, space around, and the rhythm of breathing. And keep that kind of quite wide focus. Because the instructions are, while thoroughly experiencing, or patisangvedi, thoroughly sensitive to the entire body, breathing in, breathing out. And in that unconstricted and quite sort of relaxed but not casual, it's much easier for the heart to feel comfortable and tune into more beautiful qualities, to forgive and experience warm-heartedness and gratitude, and contented. And this is certainly the way the Buddha prescribed for cultivation of samadhi. And it takes its own course, that is, if that is sustained, tendencies for the heart to eventually just quieten down, and these even perceptions and thoughts sort of become very simple. You get into just resonances of happiness, or subtle, contented quality, where the details kind of fade. It just is something that feels contented and uplifted. So that movement, shifting, and then absorbing, drinking it in, and sort of changing the way that volition works. Naturally, in that process, we're going to find elements come up, things we feel regret for, things we feel irritated by, or things we feel saddened by, of course. And then those have to be then received into that stream, till a suitable response comes up. This is time to move on. We've heard it, we've listened to it, we've felt it, we've sensed it. Okay, now can we move on? Give it its own time. Some things are quite deeply embedded. So volition is not really about pushing forward in time. And this is a very radical shift of how volition normally works. So in terms of our mind and heart, time is the structure. You get from A to B, this place to somewhere next. Having been, how do I compare with how I was, with how I am? And where I am, what would I like to be next? That's a pretty simple sketch of, of people's volitional habit. And perhaps mostly not even where I've been, but where I can get to next. Physically, sensorially, psychologically, spiritually. Volition is doing that. And this is called bhava, becoming. One of the most subliminal, not obvious, like craving for some sense object, but much more deeply embedded. And we're looking at these sources of tanha. You have karma tanha, which is associated with sense objects, and bhava tanha, craving associated with sense of becoming, time sense. Yeah, so it's very kind of convincing. I am, I will be, I surely will be. I'm not going to die yet. I will be. But then we kind of, once you've got some steadiness, you begin to sense, okay, but who is this? I've got a fairly good idea of what I want to be, but who am I now? A kind of blur of impressions, and you can't really nail one down to some sense of, in the present, what I am. Really in the present what I am, directly known, sensed. Have a kind of, there's a basic receptivity with quality streaming in and out of it, and some sort of movements of trying to make something happen or get going, or circumstances, but that's all what, they're circumstantial, aren't they? But the essence of what I am is nameless. You can't really define it. So how is that going to become anything? So the becoming self is really a fantasy, isn't it? Yeah? The self in the future is actually a fantasy, obviously, because we don't know the future. So the fantasy self in the future, is that going to lead you on? Is that something that you feel suitable to follow? So let's just pause on that one and say, okay, we'll return back to the heart again. What feels, where you feel your strength or your interest or your enthusiasm, you're going to just stay with that. And just feeling those energies moving through the heart and the body. And don't be impatient. Stay with them. So you're just letting yourself, give yourself the time to build up good intentions, skillful intentions. Whether they're going to bear fruit or not, we don't know right now, but you build them up and linger in it. And when we have a retreat time particularly, it's a chance to just begin to hold that, but then come to who is the agent of this? Is there somebody there? Who is that? And so, the Buddha talked about karma, action, that which is driven by volition, good karma, punya, bad karma, mingled, some good, some bad, mixed, and also karma that leads to the end of karma. Actions or inclinations or volitions that lead to the ending of that pull and the ending of the self, fantasy self, who is pulled and does the pulling. And when this is explained, it's quite interesting. The Buddha, or I think it's Sariputta, talking about it. He says, well, one of them anyway. Good karma is done by a being. A being creates a being, or a Buddha, that which has become, creates that which becomes. Bad karma is created by a being. Karma that leads to the end of action is through volition, not through a being. So it's a kind of movement, permeating intentionality without any person associated with it. A sense of allowing things to proceed in accordance with where there is a need, out of compassion, out of a sense of service, and the sense of what I get out of it and how good I'm doing. All those doubts and worries and measurements are just gently allayed. And then we've got much cleaner and clearer and less burdened when we're not nervous and self-conscious and hasty to do what is good. Certainly the Buddha was pretty active. I'm remembering one of the Ajahn Chah was probably one of the most impressive people I've ever encountered, poor Chah, because he was in some way extremely, could be extremely ebullient and inquiring and responsive and active. He'd engage a lot with people, with situations, questioning, queries, and a certain good humour behind it all. And yet, there was this immense space and stillness about him. And then he would just do what he'd do, and he'd just finish and he'd just switch off. And he'd be there, and he'd go, where did he go? And it's like, nothing there. Where you could feel the sense of it's difficult to put in words, like an absence that was extremely present. It was very settled, present, and spacious. But it was a spaciousness that I didn't find, I found it available. Not, I'm holding myself away from everything, just available. I finished my business. Like that. And those two modes would seem to be operating, almost to get together. So it generally did not predict what he was going to do. He always kept it really close to what the situation called for. And then the situation didn't call for things, he just stopped. And clearly quite tuned into what we mean by situation, what would support the Dhamma, the Sangha, people around him. The rest of it, not interested. Timeless. And tremendous energy, because when those weight of self-consciousness and impatience and object seeking and all that kind of stuff is released, there's a lot of energy there. And just really, you don't lose anything. Things will change, that's their nature. We don't plan a future, but naturally circumstances and conditions change. They will do. And if you maintain the centre properly, then appropriate circumstances come your way. That's my experience. The whole monastic Sangha situation is based upon that. And you can see the living evidence of it. We survive because the punya draws goodness in, and people enjoy it. Enjoy the trust, enjoy the company, enjoy the harmlessness, enjoy the spaciousness, enjoy the humanity. Brings them back to their hearts. And that sustains it. The other thing to really check is the sense of what consciousness does. Mental consciousness mostly works in terms of time. The other senses generate a sense of location. We seem to live in a visual world primarily, what we see. We're not really great sniffers. Tasting probably occurs 2 or 3 times a day, and that's it. Hearing, there's a lot of silence, but mostly we live in a world determined by visual consciousness. Somebody says, "Where do you live?" I live in this building, well, it's kuti, there's a forest around me, that's where I live. That's my place. Yeah. Well, At night time, what happens to it? Close your eyes, where does it go? But when we take that construction of consciousness for real, then we get stuck in that world, get fettered. So what we call the household life is about being held by a house. You live in that, you are that, that's yours, you belong to it, you've got to fix it, maintain it, and so forth, and you are it. And there's a certain weight to that. And sometimes a fascination, or even an obsession, where people live in 20-room buildings, houses with 25 rooms in them. Huge places. Yeah. So what are they living in? How many rooms can you live in at any given time? Basically, you need ground beneath your feet, a bubble of space arm's length around you, and some space above your head. That's all you can actually live in. The rest of it's just wallpaper, isn't it? So when we kind of keep our sense consciousness withdrawn, you find there's a lot of weight drops off and a lot of fussing and agitation and with circumstances. You begin to then do a very important thing with how volition and consciousness work. Volition is an agency in the establishment of consciousness. Paccaya sankhara vijnana, and then all the nama rupa starts to take place. We get into the descriptions of the place, the situation, and so forth. And then we become the person who's embedded in it. So just to kind of, where are you in that? This is another example of bhava. We extend presence into a world of a mirage-like quality. Certainly something going on. But how reliable, how real, how firm, how secure is it? It's not, is it? And when you extend into that, then you have to buy into the issues of security and so forth. Something you can't own. And the attempts to own it create all kinds of disturbances. So we just, let's just kind of leave that on hold, because by and large we do feel we're somewhere, we're living somewhere, and there's things that need to be done and so forth. But just who is doing it? Where does that come from? And could they do that? Move this physical body 50 miles away, could you do the same thing? In the wintertime, could you do the same thing? You change the locations, and you see what really counts is the ones that you could do independent of what the sense consciousness is bringing up. And then these will be motivated by care, compassion, skillful intentions, and the ability to let go of it. This too will change. My little kuti, my little hut, I'll walk out of it. One day they'll carry me out of it. Or I'll go somewhere else, that sense of living lightly, but while this is manifesting, I can use it as an occasion to feel gratitude, an occasion to be careful, an occasion to be mindful, an occasion to live simply, an occasion to live with conscience and concern for the other creatures that I share this world with, to live with the occasion of a skillful environment, not with the physical textures of it or the sensorial appearance. So when we lived in a dump, still live in a dump, you still take care of your robes, old, cooperation, cleanliness, tidiness, living in a dump. And that makes you very flexible, but not indifferent to your environment. So practice is not purely an external thing, I've got to get absorbed into this, that and the other, nor is it purely an internal thing. It's where the two come together, and our responses to the external have to come from the good heart. And the good heart has to be cultivated through care and attention, internally, externally, both. And then we trust, we have faith, that good heart will lead to the elimination of corruptions and the release from the stream of becoming. So let's take the time for direct practice.